Unit 5 Human Physiology. The reductionist approach to study of life forms resulted in increasing use of physicochemical concepts and techniques. Majority of these studies employed either surviving tissue model or straightway cell-free systems. An explosion of knowledge resulted in molecular biology and biophysics. However, it is now being increasingly realized that neither a purely organismic uh, approach nor a purely reductionist molecular approach would reveal the truth about biological processes or living phenomena. Biology makes us believe that all living phenomena are emergent properties due to interaction among components of a system under study. Regulatory network of molecules, supramolecules, assemblies, cells, tissues, organisms, and indeed populations and communities each create emergent properties in the digestion, exchange of gases, blood circulation, locomotion, and movement are described in cellular and molecular terms. The last two chapters point to the coordination and regulation of body events at the organismic level. Alfonso Corti, Italian anatomist, was born in 1822. Corti began his scientific career studying the cardiovascular systems of reptiles. Later, he turned his attention to the mammalian auditory system. In 1951, he published a paper describing a structure located on the basilar membrane of the cochlea containing hair cells that convert sound vibrations into nerve impulses. The organ of Corti died in the year 1888. Chapter 16 Digestion and Absorption. Food is one of the basic requirements of all living organisms. The major components of our food are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Vitamins and minerals are also required in small quantities. Food provides energy and organic materials for growth and repair of tissues. The water we take in plays an important role in metabolic processes and also prevents dehydration of the body. Biomacromolecules in food cannot be utilized by our body in their original form. They have to be broken down and converted into simple substances in the digestive system. This process of conversion of complex food substances to simple absorbable form is called digestion and is carried out by our digestive system by mechanical and biochemical methods. General organization of the human digestive system is shown in figure 16.1. 16.1 Digestive System. The human digestive system consists of the alimentary canal and the associated glands. 16.1.1 Alimentary canal. The alimentary canal begins with the interior openings, the mouth, and it opens out posteriorly through the anus. The mouth leads to the buccal cavity or oral cavity. The oral cavity has a number of teeth and a muscular tongue. Each tooth is embedded in the socket of jawbone. This type of attachment is called thecodont. Majority of mammals, including human beings, forms two sets of teeth during their life. A set of temporal, milk, or deciduous teeth replaced by a set of permanent or adult teeth. This type of dentation is called diaphragm. An adult human has 32 permanent teeth, which are of 4 different types: heterodont dentition, namely incisors, canine, premolars, and molars. Arrangement of teeth in each half of the upper and lower jaw in the order ICPMM is represented by a dental formula, which in human is 2123 upon 2123. The hard chewing surface of teeth made up of enamel helps in the mastication of food. The tongue is a freely movable muscular organ attached to the floor of the oral cavity by frenulum. The upper surface of the tongue has small projections called papillae, some of which bear taste buds. The oral cavity leads into a short pharynx, which serves as a common passage for food and air. The esophagus and the trachea windpipe open into the pharynx. A cartilaginous flap called epiglottis prevents the entry of food into the glottis. Opening of the windpipe during swallowing. The esophagus is a thin, long tube which extends posteriorly, passing through the neck, thorax, and diaphragm, and leads to a J-shaped bag like structure called stomach. A muscular sphincter gastroesophageal regulates the opening of esophagus into the stomach. The stomach, located in the upper left portion of the abdominal cavity, has 4 major parts: a cardiac portion into which the esophagus opens, a fundic region, a body main central region, and a pyloric portion which opens into the first part of the small intestine. The small intestine is distinguishable into 3 regions: a C-shaped duodenum, a long coiled middle portion jejunum, and a highly coiled ileum. The opening of the stomach into the duodenum is guarded by the pyloric sector. Ileum opens into the large intestine. It consists of cecum, colon, and rectum. Cecum is a small blind sac which hosts some symbiotic microorganisms. A narrow finger-like tubular projections. The vermiform appendix, which is a vestigial organ, arises from the cecum. The cecum opens into the colon. The colon is divided into 4 parts: an ascending, a transverse, descending, and a sigmoid colon. The descending part opens into the rectum, which opens out through the anus. The wall of alimentary canal from esophagus to rectum possesses four layers, namely serosa, muscularis, submucosa, and mucosa. Serosa is the outermost layer and is made up of thin mesothelium, epithelium of visceral organs with some connective tissues. Muscularis is formed by smooth muscles usually arranged into an inner circular and outer longitudinal layer. An oblique muscle layer may be present in some regions. The submucosal layer is formed of loose connective tissue containing nerves, blood, and lymph vessels. In duodenum, glands are also present in submucosa. The innermost layer lining the lumen of the alimentary canal is a mucosa. This layer forms irregular folds rugae in the stomach and small finger-like foldings called villi in the small intestine. The cells lining the villi produce numerous microscopic projections called microvilli, giving a brush border-like appearance. These modifications increase the surface area enormously. Villi are supplied with a network of capillaries and a large lymph vessel called the lacteal. Mucosal epithelium has goblet of cells which secrete mucus that help in lubrication. Mucosa also forms glands in the stomach, gastric glands, and crypts between the bases of villi in the intestine, grips of Leberkuhn. All the four layers show modification in different parts of the alimentary canal. 16.1.2 Digestive glands. The digestive glands associated with alimentary canal include the salivary glands and liver and the pancreas. Saliva is mainly produced by three pairs of salivary glands: the parotid cheek, the submaxillary, submandibular lower jaw, and the sublinguals below the tongue. These glands, situated just outside the buccal cavity, secrete salivary juice into the buccal cavity. Liver is the largest gland of the body, weighing about 1.2 to 1.5 kg in an adult human. It is situated in the abdominal cavity just below the diaphragm and has two lobes. The hepatic lobules are the structural and functional unit of the liver, containing hepatic cells arranged in the form of cords. Each lobule is covered by a thin connective tissue sheath called the Glissen's capsule. The bile secreted by the hepatic cells passes through the hepatic duct and is stored and concentrated in a thin muscular sac called the gallbladder. The duct of gallbladder is cystic duct along with the hepatic duct from the liver forms the common bile duct. The bile duct and the pancreatic duct open together into the duodenum as the common hepatopancreatic duct, which is guarded by a sphincter called the sphincter of Oddi. The pancreas is a compound, both exocrine and endocrine, elongated organ situated between the limbs of the C-shaped duodenum. The exocrine portion secretes an alkaline pancreatic juice containing enzymes, and the endocrine portion secretes hormones, insulin, and glucagon. 16.2 Digestion of food. The process of digestion is accomplished by mechanical and chemical processes. The buccal cavity performs two major functions: mastication of food and facilitation of swallowing. The teeth and the tongue, with the help of saliva, masticate and mix up the food thoroughly. Mucus in saliva helps in lubricating and adhering the masticated food particles into a bolus. The bolus is then conveyed into the pharynx and then into the esophagus by swallowing or deglutition. The bolus further passes down through the esophagus by successive waves of muscular contractions called peristalsis. The gastroesophageal sphincter controls the passage of food into the stomach. The saliva secreted into the oral cavity contains electrolytes: sodium positive, potassium chloride, HCO3 negative, and enzymes, salivary amylase and lysozyme. The chemical process of digestion is initiated in the oral cavity by the hydrolytic action of the carbohydrate splitting enzyme, the salivary amylase. About 30% of the starch is hydrolyzed by this enzyme. Optimum pH 6.8 into a disaccharide maltose. Lysosome present in saliva acts as an antibacterial agent that prevents infection. The starch in the presence of salivary amylase having the pH of 6.8 gives maltose. The mucosa of the stomach has gastric glands. Gastric glands are of three major types of cells. The gastric glands has three major types of cells, namely mucous neck cells, which secrete mucus; peptic sheath cells, which secrete proenzyme pepsinogen; parietal or oxyntic cells, which secrete HCl and intrinsic factor essential for the absorption of vitamin B12. The stomach stores the food for 4 to 5 hours. The food mixes thoroughly with the acidic gastric juice of the stomach by the churning movements of its muscular wall and is called the chyme. The proenzyme pepsinogen, on exposure to hydrochloric acid, gets converted into the active enzyme pepsin. The proteolytic enzyme of the stomach, pepsin, converts proteins present in the gastric juice, play an important role in lubrication and protection of the mucosal epithelium from excoriation of the highly concentrated hydrochloric acid. HCl provides the acidic pH 1.8 optimal for pepsins. Renin is a proteolytic enzyme found in gastric juice of infants, which helps in the digestion of milk proteins. Small amounts of lipases are also secreted by gastric glands. Various types of movements are generated by the muscularis layer of the small intestine. These movements help in thorough mixing up of the food with various secretions in the intestine and thereby facilitate digestion. The bile, pancreatic juice, and the intestinal juice are the secretions released into the small intestine. Pancreatic juice and bile are released through the hepatopancreatic duct. The pancreatic juice contains inactive enzyme trypsinogen, chymotrypsinogen, procarboxypeptidases, amylases, lipases, and nucleases. Trypsinogen is activated by an enzyme enterokinase secreted by the intestinal mucosa into active trypsin, which in turn activates the other enzyme in the pancreatic juice. The bile released into the duodenum contains bile pigments, bilirubin and biliverdin, bile salts, cholesterol and phospholipids, but no enzyme. Bile helps in emulsification of fats, that is breaking down of fats into very small mices. Bile also activates lipases. The intestinal mucosal epithelium has goblet cells which secrete mucus. The secretions of the brush border cells of the mucosa along with the secretions of the goblet cells constitute the intestinal juice or succus entericus. This juice contains a variety of enzymes like disaccharide, example maltase, dipeptidases, lipases, nucleosidases, etc. The mucus along with the bicarbonates from the pancreas protects the intestinal mucosa from acid as well as provide an alkaline medium pH 7.8 for enzymatic activities. Some mucosal glands, Brunner's glands, also help in this. Proteoases and peptones, partially hydrolyzed proteins in the chyme reaching the intestine are acted upon by the proteolytic enzyme of pancreatic juice as given below. Proteins, peptones and proteoses when are acted upon by trypsin, chymotrypsin or upon carboxypeptidases gives dipeptides. Carbohydrates in the chyme are hydrolyzed by pancreatic amylase into disaccharide. Polysaccharides, which is a starch, in the presence of amylase gives disaccharide. Fats are broken down by lipases with the help of bile into di and monoglycerides. Fats in the presence of lipases gives diglycerides, which gives into monoglycerides, or which is converted into monoglycerides. Nucleases in the pancreatic juice acts on the nucleic acid to form nucleotides and nucleosides. Nucleic acids, nucleases, nucleotides, nucleosides, the enzymes. Nucleic acids in the presence of nucleases give nucleotides which are converted further into nucleosides. The enzymes in the succus entericus act on the end products of the above reactions to form the respective simple and absorbable form. These final steps in digestion occur very close to the mucosal epithelium cells of the intestine. Dipeptides in the presence of dipeptidases are converted into amino acid. And there are all other sets of reactions which you can go through. The breakdown of biomacromolecules mentioned above occurs in the duodenum region of the small intestine. The simple substances thus formed are absorbed in the jejunum and ileum region of the small intestine. The undigested and unabsorbed substances are passed on to the large intestine. No significant digestive activity occurs in the large intestine. Functions of large intestine are absorption of some water, minerals and certain drugs, secretion of mucus which helps in adhering the waste undigested particles together and lubricating it for an easy passage. The undigested unabsorbed substances called feces enters into the cecum of the large intestine through ileocacal wall, which prevents the backflow of the fecal matter. It is temporarily stored in the rectum till defecation. The activities of the gastrointestinal tract are under neural and hormonal control for proper coordination of different parts. Sight, smell and or the presence of food in the oral cavity can stimulate the secretion of saliva. Gastric and intestinal secretions are also similarly stimulated by neural signals. The muscular activities of different parts of the alimentary canal can also be moderated by neural mechanism, both local and through CNS. Hormonal control of the secretion of digestive juices is carried out by local hormones produced by the gastric and intestinal mucosa. Calorific value of proteins, carbohydrates and fats. Boxed item not for evaluation. Okay, not for evaluation. Let's do this. You people can skip it if you do not want to do this, but I don't want to miss anything from Neet, so I'm doing it. The energy requirements of animals and the energy content of food are expressed in terms of measure of heat energy, because heat is the ultimate form of all energies. This is often measured to as calorie cal or joule J, which is the amount of heat energy required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. Since this value is tiny amount of energy, physiologists commonly use kilocalorie or kilojoule kg. 1 kilocalorie is the amount of energy required to raise the temperature of 1 kilogram by water by 1 degree Celsius. Nutritionists traditionally refer to kilocalorie as the calorie or joule, always capitalized. The amount of heat liberated from complete combustion of 1 gram food in a bomb calorimeter, a closed metal chamber filled with oxygen, is its gross calorific or gross energy value. The actual amount of energy combustion of 1 gram of food is the physiological value of food. Gross calorific values of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats are 4.1 kilocal per gram, 5.665 kilocalorie per gram, and 9.45 kilocalorie per gram, respectively, whereas their physiological values are 4.0 kilocalorie per gram, 4.0 kilocalorie gram, and 9.0 kilocalorie per gram, respectively. 16.3 16.3 Absorption of digested products. Absorption is the process by which the end products of digestion pass through the intestinal mucosa into the blood or lymph. It is carried out by passive, active, or facilitated transport mechanisms. A small amount of monosaccharides like glucose, amino acid, and some electrolytes like chloride ions are generally absorbed by simple diffusion. The passage of these substances into the blood depends upon the concentration gradients. However, some substances like glucose and amino acids are absorbed with the help of carrier proteins. This mechanism is called the facilitated transport. Transport of water depends upon the osmotic gradient. Active transport occurs against the concentration gradient and hence requires energy. Various nutrients like amino acid, monosaccharides like glucose, electrolytes like sodium, and sodium ion are absorbed by the blood by this mechanism. Fatty acid and glycerol, being insoluble, cannot be absorbed into the blood. They are first incorporated into small droplets called micelles, which move into the intestinal mucosa. They are reformed into very small protein-coated fat globules contain the chylomicrons, which are transported into the lymph vessels lacteals in the belly. These lymph vessels ultimately release the absorbed substances into the bloodstream. Absorption of substances takes place in different parts of the alimentary canal like mouth, stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. However, maximum absorption occurs in the small intestine. A summary of absorption, sites of absorption, and substances absorbed is given in table 16.1. The absorbed substances finally reach the tissues, which utilize them for their activities. This process is called assimilation. The digestive waste solidified into coherent feces in the rectum initiate a neural reflex causing an urge or desire for its removal. The ejection of feces into to the outside through the anal opening defecation is a voluntary process and is carried out by mass peristaltic movement. 16.4 Disorders of digestive system. The inflammation of the intestinal tract is the most common ailment due to bacterial or viral infections. The infections are also caused by the parasites of the intestine like tapeworm, roundworm, threadworm, hookworm, pinworm, etc. Jaundice. The liver is affected. The skin and eyes turn yellow due to deposit of bile pigments. Vomiting. It is the ejection of a small contents through the mouth. This reflex action is controlled by vomit center in the medulla. A feeling of nausea precedes vomiting. Diarrhea. The abnormal frequency of bowel movement and increased liquidity of the fecal discharge is known as diarrhea. It reduces the absorption of food. Constipation. In constipation, the feces are retained within the colon as the bowel movements occur irregularly. In digestion, in this condition, the food is not properly indigested, leading to a feeling of fullness. The causes of indigestion are inadequate enzyme secretion, anxiety, food poisoning, overeating, and spicy of food. PEM. Dietary deficiencies of protein and total food calories are widespread in many underdeveloped countries of South and Southeast Asia, South America, and West Central Africa. Protein energy malnutrition (PEM) may affect large sections of the population during drought, famine, and political turmoil. This happened in Bangladesh during the Liberation War and in Ethiopia during the severe drought, and in mid-80s PEM affects infants and children to produce marasmus and kwashiorkor. Marasmus is produced by simultaneous deficiency of proteins and calories. It is found in infants less than a year in age. If mother's milk is replaced too early by other food and which are poor in both proteins and calorific value, this often happens if the mother has second pregnancy or childbirth. When the older infant is still too young, in marasmus, protein deficiency impairs growth and replacement of tissue proteins. Extreme Extreme emaciation of the body and thinning of limbs results. The skin becomes dry, thin, and wrinkled. Growth rate and body weight decline considerably. Even growth and development of brain and mental faculties are impaired. Kwashiorkor is produced by protein deficiency and accompanied by calorie deficiency. It results from the replacement of mother's milk by a high calorie low protein diet in a child more than 1 year in age. Like marasmus, kwashiorkor shows wasting of muscles, thinning of limbs, failure of growth and brain development, but unlike marasmus, some fat is still left under the skin. Moreover, extensive edema and swelling of body parts are seen. Summary: the digestive system of human consists of an alimentary canal and associated digestive glands. The alimentary canal consists of the mouth, buccal cavity, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, and the anus. The accessory digestive gland includes the includes the salivary glands, the liver with the gallbladder, and the pancreas. Inside the mouth, the teeth masticates the food, the tongue tastes the food and manipulates it for proper mastication by mixing it with saliva. Saliva contains a starch digestive enzyme, a salivary amylase that digests the starch and converts it into maltose disaccharide. The food then passes into the pharynx and then enters the esophagus in the form of bolus, which is further carried down through the esophagus by peristalsis into the stomach. In the stomach, many protein digestion takes place. Absorption of simple sugars, alcohol, and medicines also take place in the stomach. The chyme food enters into the duodenum portion of the small intestine and is acted upon by the pancreatic juice, the bile, and finally by the enzyme in the succus entericus, so that the digestion of carbohydrates, proteins, and the fats is completed. The food then enters into the jejunum and ileum portion of the small intestine. Carbohydrates are digested and converted into monosaccharides like glucose. Proteins are finally broken down into amino acids. The fats are converted to fatty acids and glycerol. The digested end products are absorbed into the body through the epithelial lining of the intestinal villi. The undigested food feces enters into the cecum of the large intestine through ileocacal wall, which prevents the backflow of the fecal matter. Most of the water is absorbed in the large intestine. The undigested food becomes semi-solid in nature and then enters into a rectum and a canal and is finally digested out through the anus. Thank you.